Welcome back to Mimi's Organic Eats. Today I'm going to be sharing the best non-toxic cake pans. And if you guys didn't know, I owned a bakery for over a decade, so I have made tons and tons of cakes. And it was one of the first organic bakeries in the country, so baking with non-toxic pans was a top priority for us. So I'm going to share some of the best non-toxic cake pans for baking at home. And we're going to do a little test here so that we can have some fun and do some comparisons. I'm going to bake the same cake in 4 different cake pans, and then I'm going to talk about some of the different aspects of each cake pan so you guys can decide which cake pan is best for you. So for the purpose of this test and rating system, I have 9-inch cake pans from 4 of the top brands that make non-toxic cake pans. And I'm going to be baking the same exact cake recipe in each one so we can see how the cake bakes up in each pan and how easy it is to remove. And I'm going to be using my simple plain vanilla cake recipe that I use at my bakery for over a decade. So I know this is a tried and true cake recipe. So first up, we have the Kana stainless steel 9-inch cake pan. And now I love Kana because they care about sustainability and they also make things to last. This stainless steel cake pan has a lifetime warranty from Kana. And so they're basically saying, this is the only cake pan that you will ever need because it will last forever, and if it doesn't, we will replace it for you for free. So that's pretty cool. This cake pan retails for $55, and they also make other sizes like 6-inch, 8-inch, and 10-inch. The next cake pan we're going to be testing is the Caraway 9-inch cake pan. This one retails for $40, and it's made of non-toxic ceramic. It also comes in a slew of different colors. I have the beautiful cream, which matches all the rest of my pans, so of course I bought this color. But if you have their pan set and you want to buy different colors, they offer the cake pan in all their colors. The downside about Caraway is I think they only have the 9-inch cake pan at this time. They do also make a loaf pan as well and cupcake pans. The next cake pan we're going to be testing is from Sur La Table, and it's also a 9-inch cake pan, and this is basically what I'm calling the Caraway copycat, but for a quarter of the price. So this one is made of carbon steel, but instead of $40 like the Caraway, it's $11.92, you guys. I couldn't believe that. So I wanted to add this one into the mix because this is also a non-toxic cake pan. So I'm really excited to see how it bakes up. Now I have this one in the cream as well because I love cream and white, but they also make it in green and gray. So they also make a loaf pan, but I don't think they make really any other cake pans. So if you end up liking this one, that's kind of the downfall that you just have the one size. And the last cake pan that we're going to be testing is the USA Pan 9-inch cake pan. And USA Pan is a tried and true baking brand, and they've been around for forever. This one is made of aluminized steel, and they make cake pans in a bunch of different sizes. They have 6-inch, they have 8-inch, they also have bundt pans and cupcake pans. So if you end up liking this one, you can definitely find a lot of different options from the brand. And they're the only one that we're testing that has these little ridges. And this is signature to USA Pan. They have them in pretty much all their pans. And it really helps kind of like distribute heat evenly when your cake is baking in the oven. So if you have a temperamental oven or you're baking at high altitude or you have some other factors that could possibly alter how your cake comes out, these little ridges can definitely help with that. We use these pans a lot in my bakery because it was at 8,000 feet in altitude. So I always found that these really helped with making sure that we were getting a really even bake. And this cake pan retails for $23. So we have 4 amazing non-toxic cake pans that we're going to try out today. I'm baking the same exact cake recipe in each one, like I said, my tried and true vanilla cake recipe. So let's get to it. So I have all of my cake pans ready to go, and I've lined them all with non-toxic parchment paper. I always put parchment paper in the bottom of my cake pan whenever baking cakes. This is like an insurance policy just to ensure that your cake doesn't break when it comes out. And because I usually use parchment paper, I don't usually grease my cake pans, but with using some of these new cake pans, and especially like the Caraway one where I know it has a non-toxic ceramic coating that you're not supposed to use metal on, I'm a little bit nervous, and so I'm going to butter the sides of all these cake pans. Whereas with the stainless steel cake pan, if you want to run a butter knife around the edge before you get the cake out, it's not going to damage the cake pan or put any toxic chemicals inside your cake from scratching the cake pan. So with these other two, I'm a little bit nervous about it, so we're going to just do a little bit of butter around the sides of all of them just so that the test is even. So I just put a little bit of butter around the sides of all the cake pans. That way we have an even test for when we release these cakes. So now we have my vanilla cake batter in each cake pan. And I made each batter separately and I weighed everything, so we're going to have very accurate results. And now I'm gonna bake everything in my bottom oven because I can fit all these in the same oven, so we're not gonna have any discrepancy there. John had to come see what all the commotion has been about all day because we've been baking cakes all day. And he's kind of upset that I didn't bake one for him. So we have all of our cakes baked, and I wouldn't say that one looks better or that one looks worse. They all kind of look about the same, which is good. And so I didn't use any cake strips when I baked these cakes. And I don't know if you guys use cake strips or if you don't, but if you do, you can use them. If you don't have to use them. But cake strips are something that can help make your cakes flatter and not dome as much. And so if you don't use them, you may have a domed cake, especially if you're baking at higher altitudes. But with the Kana stainless steel cake pan, this one came out the flattest, and I'm at almost 8,000 feet. And so that's pretty crazy, especially for up here. And then the Caraway one came out the most domed of all of them. And then I would say that the USA pan and the Sur La Table one are kind of about the same, with them falling right in the middle. So that's just something to take note of if you guys don't want to use cake strips or you don't want to trim your cakes. The Kana one is going to be your best option for that because it's baking up the flattest cake. And then the next ones after that are going to be the USA pan and the Sur La Table, and then the Caraway one coming in last. Okay, so now it is time to remove these cakes from the cake pans, which I'm really excited about, but also very terrified to do because I don't want to break them. And so I have 4 different cake plates that I'm going to use so we can keep track of which cake is which. And so I usually bake with my Kana stainless steel cake pan, especially because I love to run the butter knife around the edge of the cake pan just to ensure that nothing is stuck when it comes out. This is the only cake pan that I would recommend you doing this with because it's stainless steel, it's not going to damage the cake pan. These other cake pans all have some sort of coating on them, so using something like a butter knife on them can scratch that coating. So that is what makes me nervous about these ones coming out of the pan, which is why I buttered the sides. But if you have the Kana pan and you want to go around the edge with it to ensure that your cake comes out with no issues, you can just go around right like this. And that didn't really do that much for me right now because I had buttered the sides of this. But if you don't want to butter your cake pan and you want to use a butter knife like this, then I would recommend using the stainless steel cake pan. So I'm going to use the green Anthropologie plate for the Kana cake pan. So let's see how good this one comes out of the pan. I would say that came out perfectly, 10 out of 10, no issues. So the next one we're going to take out is the USA pan, and we're using a white Anthropologie plate for this. A little bit of an issue. It seemed to be stuck a tiny bit at first, but it's made its way out. And there was no issues, so I would probably rate this a 9 out of 10. Next, we're doing the Caraway cake pan, and I'm doing this on my Mora Ceramics plate so we can keep track of it. Let's see how this one comes out. Perfect, no issues, so 10 out of 10. But the issue here with the Caraway cake pan is this one was the most domed, so as you can see, when I turn it upside down, it's not sitting perfectly flat. So if you're using this for a layer cake, you're gonna have to trim it, and if you're using it just as a single layer cake like I'm doing today, you're gonna have to flip it over. And then our last cake pan, the Sur La Table, which is the copycat of the Caraway cake pan, in my opinion. Let's see how this one comes out. This one also came out perfectly, so 10 out of 10. But this one is also pretty domed, as I could tell from it sitting there, so I'm gonna have to turn this one upside down too. So now that we have all of these out of their cake pans, nothing broke, I'm so excited. They all did a pretty good job, but I would say that the Kana is probably my favorite because I have the option to use a butter knife and it came out really easily. These ones, when you don't have the option to stick something around the edge, you just never know, and it kind of sketches me out as someone who used to bake cakes for a living, that if you break that cake coming out, then your whole time is just wasted. So I really like that assurance of knowing that I'm gonna have no issues when the cake comes out of its pan. And then as far as having your cake turn out domed, the Kana pan did the best with baking the most flat cake layer. So if you are making any sort of layer cake, then that is definitely the one that you wanna go with. Even if you're making just a single layer cake like I'm doing today, I think it's still best to have like a nice even cake. That way you get even distribution across the entire cake, where the edges aren't really thin, with a lot of frosting in the middle being really thick. With a smaller amount of frosting, you get that even distribution of cake and frosting all together. So the pan that did the second best as far as doming was the USA pan. So this one, I don't feel like I have to really trim it if I'm doing a layer cake, or if I wanna have it upside down just like I have now for doing a single layer cake, I think it's totally fine. And then the third best option was the Sur La Table, where that one domed a little bit more than the USA pan, but enough that I had to flip it over, or I would wanna trim it if I'm doing a layer cake. And then the Caraway pan did the worst as far as doming. And now I use the same exact cake recipe and the same amount of batter for every single one of these pans. And I wanna look at the height of the cake and show you guys what that doming kind of effect has if it does do that with your cake. So this is the Kana cake. As you can see, it's pretty even all around and it's thick throughout the entire cake. Let's just compare this one to the Caraway, which was the worst one. Look how thin this cake looks around the sides. That's because it's not the same height throughout the whole cake. So it's really tall here, then it goes all the way down to being really low here. So even though these are the same exact cake recipe and the same weight for each cake pan, the Kana cake appears bigger because it was evenly distributed throughout the baking time. So now it's time to frost all these cakes, and we'll cut into them and see what the inside looks like, and we'll talk about that. So as you guys can see, the Caraway pan, the cake is very short on the edge and it gets way larger as we get into the middle. But it's still baked up a really fluffy and moist cake, but it does have a little bit of crust on the outer edge. And the Sur La Table is very similar, a little bit taller in the middle, and this one has a little bit more of a crust on the edge as well. And then our USA pan is pretty much even throughout the entire cake, especially when it's frosted. You can't really tell that it domed at all. And the outer edge doesn't really have much of a crust. It's very similar to the middle, which I think is good. And then as you guys can see, the Kana cake looks to be like our biggest cake, even though we were using the same exact cake batter and the same amount and the same size pan. And this is because it baked up super even. And then the outer edge is the most similar to the middle, which I think is pure cake perfection. So while all these cake pans are non-toxic, as you can see, they don't bake up cakes the same way. While all of them would be a great choice for non-toxic baking, there are ones that stand out a little bit more than others. So if I were going to rate these cake pans from best to worst, I would rate the Kana cake pan first. Then I would rate the USA pan second. And then third, I would do the Sur La Table. And then last, I would do the Caraway. Sorry, Caraway, I love you, but your cake pan is not the best. And if you guys want the cake recipe for my simple vanilla cake that I baked at my bakery for over a decade, be sure to check the link in the description. So if you guys want to know how I frosted all these cakes, we have a fresh strawberry buttercream on this one with fresh strawberries. This one I did a cream cheese frosting with Newman's Own organic Oreos. This one I did chocolate ganache with rainbow sprinkles. And then this one I did my famous caramel frosting from my bakery with caramel swirls. And the key to this one is making sure that you make my true caramel sauce, which really makes it. If you guys want more baking tips and tricks like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join me next time in the kitchen. Happy cake baking!